Number 10. Neanderthal Flute. Music is a part of life, and it's been a part of life since the dawn of time. Not too long ago, the oldest instrument in the world was found. It was discovered in the middle of nowhere in a spooky old cave deep in the wilderness of Slovenia, Europe. It happened back in the year 1995. The unusual musical instrument was found at the bottom of a Neanderthal fire pit made around 60,000 years ago. The instrument was crafted from the thigh bone of a cave bear, drilled with 3 holes, then sharpened at one end to create a mouthpiece. It's not exactly a flute, it's not exactly a whistle, but it's somewhere in the middle. It suggests that Neanderthals were way more into music than previously believed. Amazingly, this musical instrument is at least 10,000 years older than any of the oldest European flutes found that were made from bird bones by the first modern humans. It was made about 30,000 years before Neanderthals went extinct and human beings became the norm. Unfortunately, nobody knows what kind of sound the instrument made. We don't know what songs were sung with the instrument or if there were even more of them around. To date, this is the only one ever found. What do you think it sounded like? Number 9. A rare rock. A man in Taiwan discovered a mysterious stone on one of the country's most remote islands. It's called Orchid Island, and it's a significant distance away from the mainland, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Well, on one of the island's secluded beaches, the guy found a chunk of rock that has been valued at over $200,000. Only this wasn't a rock at all. It was a chunk of ambergris, also known as whale vomit. In some Eastern cultures, ambergris is actually used for potions and medicines and also as a spice. In the West, it's used to balance the scent of fine perfumes. Yep, whale vomit in your perfume. According to the Taiwan News, the man didn't quite know what the ambergris was when he found it. He thought it was a rock. It appeared totally black and had a sweet smell to it, which was obviously quite strange for a rock. He sent a piece of it to the National University of Kaohsiung to be tested. Later, the professor of life sciences confirmed the object to be whale puke, a type of substance secreted from the inside of sperm whales. Some people call it floating gold since it's worth so much money. The lucky guy, last we heard, was intending to use the solidified vomit to get rich. The most expensive piece of ambergris was found by a fisherman who was used to making less than $700 a month. The whale puke this guy found was worth $3.2 million. Number 8. World War II dog tag. In England, a 13-year-old boy named Max Hazelhurst was out for a hike in the remote Lake District when he made a rather shocking discovery. Max discovered the dog tag of an Australian veteran over 7 decades after it went missing during World War II. The young schoolboy was walking along when he saw a piece of metal sticking out from under a rock. He first thought it was just a dog collar, but when he picked it up and looked, he saw that it was inscribed with a name and a number. The tag said W.E. Wills. Eager to figure out who the dog tag once belonged to, Max and his mother searched for details on social media. Soon they were able to identify the owner. The dog tag had belonged to Private William Ernest Wills, an airman from Australia who had been stationed in Britain during the war. He worked at an airbase in the middle of nowhere about 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers from where the dog tag was discovered. The tag was built out of a British coin from 1917, the year in which the soldier was born. Unfortunately, Max and his mother found out the soldier had died in a car accident after returning from the war at only 43 years old. They did manage to make contact with the soldier's daughter and then helped to return the dog tag to her. Number 7. New bee species. In the middle of the Ocala National Forest, scientists with the Florida Museum of Natural History discovered the very first nest of a very rare bee species. Researchers were on their second field observation trip when they found a nest full of rare blue calamintha bees. They're protected under the Endangered Species Act. According to Jarrett Daniels with the museum, the scientists' goal is to keep the bees around for the foreseeable future. What's really fascinating is that the bee was only first described in 2011 and has only been located in 4 different places in the world. The main location where the bees live is a remote patch of land in the middle of Florida that was once a chain of islands in the prehistoric past. Today, species not found anywhere else in the country are still in this remote ecosystem. The bees aren't that different from other bees, other than their unusual underground nesting habits, as opposed to normal bees who make their hives in the trees. Save the bees! Oh, and if you're new to this channel, welcome! Thanks for checking us out. If you're liking the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. The oldest rug in the world. Deep in the remote Altai Mountains of Siberia, a rug was found. Yes, the oldest rug, like the one under your coffee table. While at first it might not seem all that incredible, you should know that it was actually the oldest rug known to man. It was excavated from a grave in 1948. Everything about this story is absolutely insane. The grave belonged to the Prince of Altai, and it was found 5,400 feet above sea level. Within his grave was a hand-knotted rug fashioned about 2,500 years ago, woven in the 5th century BC. The weaving techniques were found to be quite sophisticated for the time period, with scientists agreeing that the art of carpet weaving probably goes even further back, probably to at least 4,000 years ago. It's also interesting that the grave was already robbed of most of its possessions when archaeologists arrived at the site. The only thing grave robbers didn't take was the rug, because they probably hadn't seen it as being of much value. But because the thieves never covered up the hole that they dug into the grave, the rug ended up being frozen for thousands of years, leaving it protected for 25 centuries. The only reason the rug was found by archaeologists is because of the grave robbers, making it kind of ironic. As for who the Prince of Altai was, he was an old Scythian ruler. Not much else is known of him. Number 5. Waffle Rock. Waffle Rock is a strange geological feature in the middle of nowhere in West Virginia, and it's currently on display outside the visitor center at Jennings-Randolph Lake. And while it may just be a giant rock, it has actually baffled people for centuries since it was first discovered. The reason for this is the strange waffle-like pattern on the rock, making it look as though someone burned it with a waffle maker. But you don't want to pour your syrup all over it and eat it. It's a rock. But because of its strange markings, there have been a lot of conspiracy theorists who claim it actually had its origins in alien technology. However, that's not the case. According to the U.S. Corps of Engineers, the mysterious rock is made of deposits that go back 300 million years. As the continent of America was breaking up into what it is today, this sandstone block became folded over itself repeatedly, and over the millions of years, cracks filled with iron oxide. The iron oxide mixed with grains of sand, and a very hard material was formed in the pattern of a waffle. It was a process that took nearly 1/8 of the Earth's life. Number 4. Giant Mammoth Leg. On April 25th in Florida, a diver discovered something pretty amazing. While doing what he does best, diving, he found a giant mammoth bone at the bottom of a river in the middle of no man's land. Derek Demeter, the director of Seminole State College's Emile Buehler Perpetual Trust Planetarium, and his friend Henry Sadler, a Florida schoolteacher, both like to dive in their spare time. The pair weren't really looking for anything crazy, just whatever they could find in the Peace River. Everything was going as expected when, through the darkness of the murky water, Derek saw something that looked impressive. After quite a struggle, he managed to get the 4-foot, 1.2-meter artifact out of the water and onto the shore. It turned out to be a single leg bone of the giant Columbian mammoth that weighed 50 pounds, 23 kilograms. The leg bone has been estimated at around 100,000 years old, from a time when giant furry elephant creatures roamed Florida and it was a vast savanna grassland. When you uncover this fossil and realize there were these giant elephant-like creatures roaming around what was probably once a grassland in Florida, it gives you a sense of wonder for what it was like back in ancient times, Derek told the Orlando Sentinel. It's kind of like our way of time traveling. It makes your imagination go wild. The bone is a femur, and according to the Miami Herald, it's going to be kept in Sadler's classroom rather than a museum. Number 3. The Strangest Plant. The Hydnora plant has been called the strangest plant in the world. It's a type of parasitic plant that can be found only in Africa and Arabia, with a complete lack of leaves and a rather hideous appearance. But because these strange plants are found in the middle of nowhere and very far from civilization, they're almost never seen. It's one of the earliest parasitic plants to evolve and doesn't resemble any other flowering plant on Earth. It only flowers occasionally, and when it does, it comes out from under the ground with such force that it can actually damage infrastructure and rip right through pavement. The Hydnora really is a plant only found in the most remote places. There are 8 recognized species in total, though a lot of them were only recently identified, such as one that was discovered in a market back in 2011 in South Africa, and another in 2018 found deep in Arabia. Others are located far from civilization in places like Madagascar. Number 2. Secret Russian Airbase. There's an abandoned airbase in Russia located in the absolute middle of nowhere, littered with abandoned fighter aircrafts. The base is at the very edge of Siberia, known as the Smirnica Air Base. It was first detected by Western intelligence in 1962, and in 1972 a U.S. reconnaissance satellite showed several long-range interceptors and transports stationed at the base. In the 1980s, the remote facility was home to an impressive new MiG-23 interceptor regiment. This means that there were tons of fighter planes that could have been scrambled to quickly streak across the ocean and be in Alaska in just minutes. In 1983, Korean Air Flight 007 was shot down by an Su-15 jet, and MiG-23 fighter crafts were scrambled from the airbase. Today, the place just sits eerily abandoned. Nothing is left except the MiG-23 fighters in their hangars, turning steadily to rust. Would you like to explore this place? Do you think it would be haunted? Number 1. Moon Meteorite. Deep in the Sahara Desert, a piece of the moon was discovered. That's right, a literal piece of the moon. All those dimples and craters you see on the face of the moon with a telescope, well, they were put there by asteroids. And sometimes when an asteroid hits the moon, rocks get flung into space, and some of those rocks land on our planet. NWA 12691 is one of the biggest moon rocks ever found on the surface of the Earth, weighing nearly 30 pounds. It was originally discovered in the Western Sahara and is one of 30 dug from the sand during the impressive haul. It was part of a meteorite shower, with the moon meteorites scattering across the isolated region of the Sahara. It has since gone on sale for $2.5 million. And this rock is pretty small compared to the moon itself. The biggest moon rock was brought back to Earth by Apollo astronauts. It was called Big Mully and weighed 26 pounds. It was found by Apollo 16 astronaut Charlie Duke at Plum Crater at the moon's Descartes Highlands in 1972. Just imagine if you could get up to the moon with a pickaxe. You'd make an absolute fortune. Number 10. Alien Underwater Base. There have been some strange objects found scattered across the Antarctic ocean floor, and some say they could be part of a secret alien underwater base. This shocking discovery was made by alien life observer Scott Waring. Using Google Maps, he discovered that in the Antarctic region, there are bizarre anomalies just off the coast. According to Scott himself, there's nothing ordinary about the objects and shapes he discovered, and they really do stand out from the rest of the icy environment. Additionally, he discovered that some parts of the water on Google Maps have actually been pretty blurred, preventing people from seeing what's really there using satellite images. He said, "I've used Google Maps to zoom into the Antarctica region, and they are right there. You can see a lot of other anomalies sitting in between the snow and ice caps on the nearby bay." Here's what else Scott did. He used Google Maps to travel back in time to the 1980s, thereby being able to compare older pictures of Antarctica with those taken recently. What he found was that the base had been sitting underwater the whole entire time, with each large structure located less than a mile from the next one. Unfortunately, there's no evidence to back up any of these mysterious claims other than the fact that these objects underwater do sort of look like they were man-made. But by whom? If it is indeed an alien base that extraterrestrials are using to keep out of sight near the South Pole, the big question is, what could they possibly be using the base for? Do you have any ideas? Number 9. Oldest pyramids in the world. The oldest pyramid on Earth is hidden under the snow of Antarctica. At least that's what conspiracy theorists are claiming. They say that a mysterious pyramid-shaped object discovered near the Shackleton mountain range is proof that some race of beings constructed a megalithic pyramid on the continent far before any other civilization had been there. And to be quite honest, there could actually be some truth to the theory. After all, the satellite images taken of the pyramid structure are very real. Sure, it could be a mountain covered in snow, but it does have 4 slanted sides just like the Great Pyramid of Giza. In fact, it actually looks very similar. And as most of us already know, nature doesn't really make a whole lot of things using extremely straight lines and perfect geometry. The theory was first discussed on the History Channel in an episode of the famous show Ancient Aliens. According to what David Childress, professional ancient astronaut theorist, said on the show, if the structure does prove to be a man-made building, it'll likely be the oldest pyramid on the planet. How old is it? Chances are it dates back to before there was ever even ice on the continent, which would mean tens of thousands of years. As for who built it, some say aliens, some say a secret ancient society. Number 8. The Lost City of Atlantis. The Lost City of Atlantis may have actually been located on the continent of Antarctica. One of the craziest theories about the origins of Atlantis says that about 12,000 years ago, the crust of the Earth shifted in a way that the continent was displaced. In other words, Antarctica used to be further north in an area that would have meant much warmer climates and a lot more human inhabitants. After the crust shifted, Antarctica was swept away to the bottom of the world. The theory also says that its residents at the time, the ancient Atlanteans, actually had their cities buried under thick layers of ice and were all but destroyed. Of course, the science of today says this is impossible. There's no way that 12,000 years ago Antarctica was anywhere other than where it is right now. It was definitely part of the supercontinent Gondwana, though this specific giant landmass broke apart over 180 million years ago and split into what is today Antarctica, Australia, South America, and Africa. Most scientists and historians throughout history have come to the conclusion that Plato's record of the lost kingdom of Atlantis was totally fictional. According to this, the Greek philosopher made up Atlantis as his vision of an ideal civilization and intended the story of its demise to be an advisory tale of the gods simply punishing humans. There are no written accounts of Atlantis existing outside of Plato's literature, including in any of the numerous other texts that survive from ancient Greece. And to lend even less credibility to the wild theory, not a single piece of evidence has ever been found that a secret race of Atlanteans even lived here. Number 7. The Doomsday Glacier. Everyone is pretty worried about the polar ice caps melting. People are also worried about the glaciers in Antarctica melting and flooding the world as we know it. There are some out there who claim a Doomsday Glacier is only years away from raising the global sea levels by 3 feet, 1 meter. The actual name of this huge disastrous piece of ice is the Thwaites Glacier, located on the West Antarctic ice sheet. The glacier is 74,000 square miles, 191,659 kilometers, roughly the size of the state of Florida. It is a huge piece of ice, and doomscrollers are convinced it could very well mean the end of the world. It's one of the biggest and most unstable glaciers on the planet, though the Pine Island Glacier is still melting the fastest as of right now. But before you go throwing an epic end of the world party, take a look at some research published by the University of Michigan. They say the Doomsday Glacier is actually a lot less dangerous than people think, and that the cause for so much concern is false. The researchers have proposed that the glacier is surprisingly stable and shows no sign of imminent collapse. It could stay frozen for the foreseeable future, meaning no dramatic raising of the sea levels. At least, not from this particular glacier. What do you think? Should people really be worried about global warming? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't already. Number 6. Mysterious Ice Ship. A mysterious ship has been discovered off the coast of Antarctica, and nobody knows what it means. The ship was spotted by a curious user on Google Earth. Based on the scale of reference, the ship is about 400 feet, 122 meters in length. How do we know it's a ship? Well, we actually don't really know for sure. We only know that it looks identical to a cruise ship lying on its side. It has a row of windows along its exterior, just like what you see on a modern cruise liner sailing around today. It also seems to have a smokestack. If it's not a ship, it certainly looks an awful lot like one. But just what would a 400-foot, 122-meter ship be doing on its side, completely covered in ice? Where did it come from? There hasn't been a ship matching this description listed as missing. For once, conspiracy theorists are at a loss. It makes no sense. The only thing anyone can say for certain is that if the ship's real, it's definitely part of a strange cover-up. But by which government or organization, and why? Number 5. Hitler's Antarctica. There's a wild theory that says Hitler ordered his men to travel to Antarctica and find an entrance to the inside of the Earth. There is absolutely no evidence that this happened, but the rumors have persisted for the last 70 years. It's said that Hitler knew there was something hiding underneath the Antarctic ice, and he was hell-bent on finding it. Somewhere lost on the continent and covered in ice and snow, there could be a hidden base constructed by Nazis to carry out top-secret research during World War II. It's just that nobody's ever found it. But what happened to these Nazi researchers after Hitler died and the war was over? Well, the second part of the theory says Hitler never died. He faked it, then escaped with a small group of trusted men on board a ship, which they then took all the way to the South Pole to live out the rest of Hitler's days in hiding. Such a preposterous idea started circulating after the end of the war, and in 1952, President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "We've been unable to unearth one bit of tangible evidence of Hitler's death." Many people believe that Hitler escaped from Berlin. Stalin's top army officer, Marshal Gregory Zhukov, whose troops were actually the very first to enter Berlin, stated after a long and thorough investigation in 1945, "We have found no corpse that could be Hitler's." But is this because Hitler never escaped, or because we just haven't found any proof? Number 4. The Walking Whale. There's a mythical creature allegedly living in Antarctica that nobody's ever heard of before. Even stranger is that the rumor of this monstrous beast originated thousands of miles away in Japan. It's known today as the Ningen, and apparently there are quite a few of them. They've been spotted patrolling the icy waters around Antarctica. Eyewitnesses describe them as humanoid, totally white, and able to walk across land and breathe underwater. They've also been described as walking whales. The first sighting came from a Japanese research ship, with those on board witnessing what they thought was a submarine floating in the distance. When they got closer, they realized it was a living animal. It almost looked like a whale until they saw it had a pair of legs. The creature dove into the water and mysteriously vanished without a trace. Between then and now, there have been more unconfirmed reports of Ningen sightings. There have also been more bizarre descriptions of them, with some experts claiming they are a breed of underwater human-ape hybrids with blubbery skin that only came out at night. Antarctic mermaids, maybe? Number 3. Lost civilization. Some shocking claims were made recently that a massive ancient civilization is currently frozen beneath roughly a mile of ice in Antarctica. What's even more shocking is that the claims may actually have merit. You see, NASA allegedly found traces of human settlements buried underneath the ice by using special remote sensing photography as part of something called Operation Icebridge. There was no information released on who could have built an ancient settlement here. However, there's an ancient map known as the Piri Reis map, drawn up by a Turkish admiral in the year 1513 that appears to show Antarctica. The map is highly controversial because the official narrative says that Antarctica was only discovered in 1929. The suggestion here is that back in the 1500s, there was a civilization living on the continent and the old cultures of the world knew it. How it got lost or why scientists don't discuss it today is still a mystery. Number 2. Who found Antarctica first? Speaking of discovering Antarctica, new research has suggested that the coldest continent in the world was actually discovered 1,300 years before Westerners ever reached its freezing shores. According to Live Science, the Polynesians may have explored Antarctica way before Europeans did. The study included assessing oral histories passed down from the ancient Polynesians. One of these oral histories came from the Maori people of New Zealand, who spoke of an explorer named Hui Te Rangiora. His crew apparently voyaged into icy waters farther south than anyone before them. Apparently, they did this in the 600s, over 1,400 years before today, and over 600 years before the Maori arrived in New Zealand. And it actually makes quite a bit of sense. Polynesia isn't that far from Antarctica, and it wouldn't have been that difficult for a crew of people to get in a boat and start sailing, and accidentally stumble upon what we now know today as Antarctica. Number 1. Hidden alien ship. Yet another insane discovery was made recently in Antarctica thanks to Google Maps. What appears to be an alien ship half frozen under the Antarctic ice was spotted by UFO hunters online, sparking even more theories about an alien presence on the southernmost continent. The UFO in question is a perfect disk visible on Google Earth in an area where nothing else like it can be seen. At first glance, it looks like it could be a rock or maybe a stony outcrop. However, looking closer, you can see that it appears to be artificially made, built in a perfect circle just like a traditional UFO. But just what is it doing here? It almost looks like it crash-landed into the permafrost, which would suggest it did so thousands of years ago before the area was covered in ice, only being revealed from its frozen prison recently due to the planet warming up. Are there still aliens on board? Is it proof of an abandoned alien base beneath the ground? As of right now, seeing as nobody can exactly go down there and check it out, we simply don't have the answer. Number 10. Jeepers Creepers monster. In Texas, a terrifying monster that looks a lot like the villain from the Jeepers Creepers franchise was witnessed falling out of the sky. According to the eyewitnesses themselves, it happened near Las Milpas, where they were driving down the road one day. From out of nowhere, a man appeared in the sky with huge bat-like wings just like the creepy monster from the Jeepers Creepers movies. He even had on a cowboy hat. The creature fell, pumped its wings to try and slow its descent, and then quickly vanished into the forest. It's important to note that there's no video evidence of this happening, but it's not the first time somebody's witnessed this very same beast in rural Texas. Nobody knows where this thing lives or what it does, or even if people have just been watching too many horror movies and mistook a huge bird for a monster, though most people can tell the difference. Still, those who have seen this freaky creature, a thing the size of a man with crazy wings like a giant bat, swear it's real. Number 9. Sneaking Goblin. In Argentina, youngsters near the city of Santiago del Estero witnessed what can only be described as a very real and very creepy goblin. The kids were playing in a makeshift pitch, kicking around a football when a small, unidentifiable creature suddenly appeared behind them. Luckily for us, there was an eyewitness filming the children as they played their game of football, and they were able to capture the mysterious creature on camera. From what we can see in the footage, the strange hunched-over monster ambles forward rather quickly, causing the children to scream in terror and run away. And then the goblin itself simply scampered off and was not seen again. Maybe the children's screams scared it. One of the mothers in the neighborhood described the goblin as a paranormal phenomenon, while other parents refused to let their children go back to the pitch in fear that the goblin would get them. We don't know if this really was a goblin in the traditional sense, meaning a cruel and mischievous creature that likes to steal gold and jewels, but we do know that it was some kind of animal, small and green and with pointy ears. Number 8. The Washington Sasquatch. Do you believe in Bigfoot? The Washington State Department of Transportation is convinced the Sasquatch is real. The department recently revealed photos of what they say could be the Sasquatch passing through Sherman Pass. The sighting was made thanks to a traffic camera pointed at State Route 20. The camera also has a pretty clear vantage of some nearby trees. It managed to capture a photograph of the alleged Sasquatch just as it walked in front of a snowy tree. The problem is that the brown fur of the supposed Sasquatch made it blend in perfectly with the tree, making it kind of hard to distinguish. It definitely looks like an upright humanoid being in the photo. You can see it seems to have one leg in front of the other as it's walking. But because of its position in front of the tree and the blurriness of the picture, it's hard to be certain. Still, this could be a legit photo of Bigfoot. He's been known to loiter in the area, and there have been dozens of sightings of him here before. This just so happens to be the first potential evidence caught on camera. It's only too bad the department didn't have a video and only produced this blurry photograph. Number 7. Skinwalker. In New Mexico, something horrifying was caught lurking on the side of an old road. Somebody posted a photograph that was allegedly taken near Liebrook, showing what seems to be a Skinwalker, a type of mythical creature from a Native American legend. The Skinwalker is a person who possesses the supernatural ability to turn into any creature, walking in any animal's skin. There are countless stories of these eerie encounters with the Skinwalker, dating back to the days of the first Native Americans and counting into the earliest days of European settlers. According to the story behind the picture, it may have been taken by a geologist working nearby in an oil field who spotted the strange creature, captured a photo of it, and then mysteriously quit their job and vanished the very next day. The story's never been verified and the picture's never been authenticated, but it was still enough to freak out all the people living in the area. If a Skinwalker does have the ability to change into any animal, does that mean that every creature sighting we've talked about today could potentially be a Skinwalker? What do you think of this? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Drifting Spectre. A ghost hunter recently captured blood-chilling footage of a supernatural being while inspecting a haunted mansion built in the 17th century. The ghost hunter's name is Mark Vernon, and he claims that he can not only see spirits, but he can speak to them too. The picture was taken after he arrived at East Riddleston Hall in West Yorkshire, England. And to be quite honest, there doesn't appear to be anything fake about the drifting spectre moving through the spooky halls of the property. He captured several photographs of what really looks like a floating fog in different rooms of the large estate. It was as if the ghost was following him around the property. Oddly enough, there's actually a known ghost that haunts the mansion. She's known as the Grey Lady, and she has apparently been in the house ever since her husband returned from war to find her cheating on him with another man. In anger, the husband killed the woman by trapping her in a room and letting her die of starvation. To this day, her ghost still roams the corridors, searching for her lost lover. Even Helen Clark from the National Trust admitted that her and other employees often hear of unexplainable sightings of ghosts and of visitors experiencing the presence of something otherworldly while visiting the historical mansion. Number 5. The Beast of Bladenboro. The story of the Beast of Bladenboro begins in Bladen County in the small town of Clarkton, North Carolina. It was December of 1953 when a local woman heard her neighbor's dogs barking relentlessly. When she went outside to see what the fuss was about, she witnessed a massive creature that looked like a huge cat but definitely wasn't any kind of mountain lion or bobcat. This was the very first sighting of the Beast of Bladenboro. 2 days later, Bladenboro Police Chief Roy Forres was called out to a local farm where the farmer's dogs had been killed by a large and mysterious animal. The dogs had been drained of their blood and were bone dry like bags of dirt. Throughout the next 2 weeks, more reports began coming in of a large creature dragging away people's pets into the forest. There were dozens of reports of dogs being attacked all across the county. With each attack came an eyewitness account of a beast like a bear or a panther. Local residents were also reporting terrifying screams coming from the swamps at night. Of course, nobody had any idea what kind of beast this was. After all, there are no animals in nature known to literally drain the blood of their victims. The beast was said to live in the dark swamps near the Cape Fear River. The entire town was beyond terrified. The story of the beast was picked up by several newspapers, and soon Bladenboro was flooded with a flurry of hunters coming in, eager to catch the monster. More than 600 men from as far away as Tennessee traveled to the town. A fully armed bunch of fraternity brothers from UNC Chapel Hill even made its way down to Clarkton with hopes of putting the creature's head on their wall. But after 2 weeks, things calmed down, and no one ever saw the beast again. To this day, nobody knows what terrorized Bladen County in 1953. Number 4. The Canadian Mermaid. In 1967, the only mass sighting of a mermaid happened in Canada. These days, nobody would ever believe that a mermaid was witnessed by a ferry filled with passengers, but just a few decades ago, it did really happen. The event occurred while the ferry was moving through Main Island, British Columbia. The island's located just a stone's throw away from the Washington border. Several witnesses reported the mermaid sitting on a rock, being splashed by the constant waves, and casually taking a bite out of a raw salmon. The mermaid had silvery blonde hair, she was topless, and everyone on the ferry agreed as to what they saw. A photograph was even taken of the creature by George Harrison from Iowa, who had been on board the vessel. Plus, a local resident was flying over the area later on the same day and took an aerial photograph in which the mermaid lady can still be seen sitting on the rock, just kinda lounging as if she didn't have a care in the world. The local newspaper, The Colonist, got excited and ran the story the very next day. That's how many people saw this thing. It was, like I already said, a true mass sighting. The newspaper even offered a huge reward of $25,000 to anyone who could capture the mermaid. Of course, nobody could. Marine biologists argued that mermaids didn't even exist. Then, after a few weeks, all the fuss died down. To date, no other mermaid has ever been seen in the area. If you saw a mermaid, would you ever give up trying to prove its existence? Number 3. The Slender Man. Depending on who you ask, the Slender Man is a very real creature that stalks the shadows. He's a very tall mythical being who wears a black suit and has no face. He can also stretch his arms like retractable tentacles. However, the truth behind Slender Man is that he was born in June of 2009 during a competition in which a web forum asked for ideas to create a modern myth to terrify everyone. An unknown person responded to the forum with 2 photoshopped pictures, each one from the 1980s, showing a tall and sinister figure lurking behind groups of kids. Some vague text was attached to the photograph, suggesting that 14 of the young people had gone missing after the photo was taken. This is where Slender Man comes from, according to the in-depth report from the BBC. It was all really just supposed to be a scary meme, and yet the Slender Man has taken on a life of his own. It's not that the Slender Man has been witnessed so much as kids have obsessed over the mysterious figure. In 2018, 15-year-old Morgan Geyser was sentenced to spend 40 years in mental health treatment and monitoring after she plotted to kill her 6th grade classmate because she was scared that the Slender Man would come after her and kill her and her family if she didn't do as she was told. She stabbed the young girl 19 times, though her victim miraculously survived after being discovered by a passing cyclist. Still, the Slender Man has made an overwhelming impact on today's pop culture. Number 2. The Lair of the Loch Ness Monster. A fisherman has discovered what could be the lair of the Loch Ness Monster. According to the Daily Mail, Keith Stewart discovered a crevice at the very bottom of Loch Ness that goes down about 900 feet, 274 meters. He discovered the mysterious trench using specialized sonar equipment. Considering how truly massive the fissure is at the bottom of the loch, it is possible that a beast of biblical size could indeed be living down there and avoiding all detection. The trench has since been dubbed Keith's Abyss. To really bolster the theory of the Loch Ness Monster living down there, one of Keith's colleagues took a sonar image of the trench, revealing what appeared to be a hump lying at its bottom. But during a trip just shortly after when he scanned the same area, that hump was curiously gone. The consensus is that something huge is moving around at the bottom of the trench, making it very hard to track. Number 1. The Mothman. In Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a man has taken a photo of what locals fear could be the legendary Mothman. The creature has plagued this quiet town for decades, starting back in the 1960s and the weeks leading up to the devastating Silver Bridge collapse. The Mothman is a bad omen, and he only ever appears before complete catastrophe. The creature is human-like with large wings and blazing red eyes. If the Mothman is back, it's bad news for everyone in Point Pleasant. The creature hasn't been witnessed in nearly 50 years, and yet a snapshot has just surfaced of what appears to be a winged man flying between the trees alongside State Route 2, taken by an individual who refused to be identified or interviewed on camera. However, this person was adamant that he had not changed the images in any way and that he had happened across the Mothman by accident while driving. He stopped to take a picture, and then the Mothman was gone. Thanks for watching. Which of these legendary monsters terrifies you the most? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you like what you saw, be sure to hit the subscribe button for more.